Afternoon, folks. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School, and I'm down here at the Pathfinder Outdoor Classroom, prepping materials and getting ready for an intro to survival class that starts on Friday of this weekend. And I thought while I was down here, I would go ahead and do my AAR from this week's episode of Extracted. I missed 1 week there, and a lot of people were asking me, what about it, what about it, what about it? I put 2 weeks into the last week's AAR. I won't miss another one. So, with all of that said, let's talk about last night's episode. And again, observations from my standpoint of survival, okay? One thing I will say is we did see people actively fishing and catching fish. That bodes well for them longer term, that they're able to sustain themselves with food off the landscape. That's a good thing. That's a critical piece when you're talking about long term. Short term, it's not so important. Long term, it's very important. All right? So the first thing that happened was a carryover challenge from last week where they had dropped a raft into the water with a drone that had a crate on that raft. And they didn't tell anybody about it, I don't think. And so as people were wandering around, people started to notice that this raft was floating in the middle of the lake and nobody really knew what it was. Well, one guy decided he was going to swim out there. And then a girl swam out there about the same time. And it was pretty neck and neck for a minute, but the guy obviously beat her to the raft. And nobody knows what's in the raft, so everybody could have swam to the raft, obviously, right? Not just one guy or two people. But we're down to, I think we're down to 4 now, or 5? 4, I believe we're down to now, at the end of this show. So he takes the raft back to shore. He opens up the box. And basically it is whoever got to the raft first gets a free resource drop of their choosing. And there was a list of things you could choose from on that list that you could get a resource drop basically at your beck and call. Whenever you decided you wanted it, you could order it up. He ordered it up, got a 10-pound salmon delivered to him with a drone. That thing was about that big. And that's a couple days worth of food, no problem. So he did really good for himself on that challenge. Unfortunately, the other person that swam out there, spent a bunch of calories, got wet, all those types of things, did not get to partake in any of the reward from that. And I think that's part of the show. Part of the show is, it's a first come, first serve. And really, it's more about the people back at the headquarters in my mind than it is about the people that are staying out there in the woods doing the surviving, because in truth, they are at the mercy of resource drops. They're at the mercy of challenges to gain resources. And they're at the mercy of the social experiment back in that headquarters of who does what and causes them to either get something or not get something. And the twist at the end of this show was very important in this episode, I believe, because this was really the first time where one team could actually put the screws to another team in a pretty drastic manner, okay? And there were 2 different navigation points. One was easier to get to and easier to find than the other. One of the resource locations had food and water. The other one had food and water, but it also had a sat phone that you could have a 2-minute conversation with your family. How important is that in the grand scheme of things, considering you might have to walk a lot further for that box? To me, it's not that important. But at this stage of the game, when you really don't know what's happening at headquarters or why necessarily you're getting empty boxes or why things aren't going your way, it may be important for your team or family to tell you, hey, this is what's going on. This is why you're getting jammed up. We're not doing it to you. Other people are, or it's being forced into that type situation. So that could have been important. But again, not so much in my mind for the calorie expenditure it took to go get that box. Everybody found the boxes. Now, here's the key to the whole thing and a twist with this. Before anybody was allowed to go, you could choose which box your contestant was going to go to. So you either gave them the hard route or the easy route. Hard route had the sat phone, easy route, just food and water. Hard route, food, water, and a sat phone. So the twist in this was that everybody had to go to the supply room and everyone had to choose one contestant that's box was going to be empty, whether they found it or not. And it only took 2 people to vote that way for someone's box to be empty when they found it. But now you can force someone to expend a lot of calories to go somewhere to find a box that's going to be empty, all right? So again, empty box, empty box, empty box. That's got to be playing on your head sooner or later if you don't know what's going on at headquarters, which you don't, okay? Now, the final twist was another so-called resource drop, which you're going to get a box, right? Again, not guaranteed to get resources in that box because lots of people have had empty box after empty box after empty box after empty box. However, The big twist with this one, and this is where you could really put the screws to somebody, was that each team went into the supply room in random order, and they picked someone to lose items that they already had, and it was critical items. It was things like a canteen, a hatchet, a shelter, fire starting implements. Those things were taken away. So as each team went in, they're looking at who's the strongest person. That's the person I'm going to take important items from, because that's going to make them suffer that much more, and maybe they'll quit and my person will win. It's a game after all, right? And that's really what it's all about. It's a social experiment and a game to win $250,000. So obvious choice is going to be you pick the strongest guy, you take the most important items from him, and carry on, right? Well, the two guys are really obviously showing that they're the strongest. Whether they are or not remains to be seen. But they brag about being the strongest the most. I've got it made out here. I'm going good. Write the check. We're good to go. And it's nothing against them. That's good. That's good mindset to have. And it's also, great mindset for headquarters, not understanding that the things that you're saying may get you screwed in the end, which is exactly what happened. And basically the two guys are the ones that got picked on. The two girls got left alone. And so they got to keep everything they had. But the two guys who were saying they were strong, lost some very critical items. One of them even lost his shelter tarp. So now you're without shelter, you're without fire-making materials. If you don't have a bed of coals, which Woody did have a bed of coals so he could start another fire, but now he's got to keep that in the back of his mind. That's going to have to happen. One of the guys, of the three guys that are left, there was 5 contestants left, 3 guys and 2 girls. One of the guys lost his sleeping bag. And when that happened, he pretty much gave up, extracted me, I'm out of here, okay? He did not want to go through another night without a sleeping bag. Was that a good move or a bad move? It's not for me to say. So, for that said, maybe 1 or 2 more nights to see what happens next. May have been a good call, but it wasn't his call. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So now you're down to 4 contestants. You got 2 guys that appear to be fairly strong, but both of them lost critical resources, okay? And then you have the 2 females left and 2 girls left. They didn't lose anything, and they both appear to me to be pretty strong candidates, although they're not bragging about it. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. A lot of people, tend to act like they don't like the show or say they don't like the show, but I think you have to look at it for what it is. It's not Alone. It's not a survival show. It's not Naked and Afraid. It is a completely different type of show where you've got a social dynamic happening in that headquarters area. And the people in the woods that are surviving per se, really they're just inconveniently camping without a lot of resources, but they're there for, it's been at least a couple of weeks now. They are getting food, they are getting water, they did have shelter. So it's not like an emergency scenario, and they're getting supply drops every episode of some kind. Some of them are not getting anything in those supply drops, but they're getting supply drops. But they are, most of them, catching fish. So what you have to understand about this is it's a different type of show altogether, because the people in the woods are at the mercy of the people in headquarters. They're not really at the mercy of themselves per se. Yes, it's up to them to build shelter. It's up to them to build a firewood bank. It's up to them to go out and get food when they can, things like that. But in the grand scheme of things, if things can be taken away from you, that has everything to do with what's over here in the headquarters and nothing to do with the guys on the ground or the girls on the ground. So it's a different concept for a show altogether, and it's an interesting dynamic to watch. We'll see what happens next week. That's my AAR for this week. And again, I go back to fire, improvement of shelters at every opportunity, banking firewood at every opportunity, and then, now that it's a little bit longer term, finding food at every opportunity. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for family, for business, all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. I'll be back with another AAR next week. And don't forget, every episode, to take pictures of our Pathfinder gear on the episode and post it to social media, Instagram, tag Pathfinder Gear Extracted, tag FoxTV, tag Extracted, tag Self-Reliance Outfitters, and all of those data banks are searched by us every week. We pick a winner every week to receive a free prize pack of gear used on Extracted. All right, guys, I'll see you next week. Thanks.